Welcome back to Robots versus Vampires, the show where the lines between science fiction and fantasy, well, they kind of blur, and the impossible becomes reality. I'm Adrian Smith.
And I'm Julia Jones. I'm the sci-fi expert here and always ready for another crazy adventure.
Today we're diving into a world where robots and vampires, they not only coexist, but they clash in some really unexpected ways. And right at the heart of it all is a vampire seeking a cure for her immortality.
Oh, wow. Immortality angst. Isn't that a bit cliche?
You might think so, but what if this vampire is like a historian obsessed with uncovering the secrets of her own kind?
Now, that's a fascinating twist. It makes you wonder, why would a vampire, a creature supposedly defined by, its eternal existence, be so driven to unravel the past? What's she looking for?
That's the mystery, isn't it?
Yeah.
Our protagonist is Dr. Amelia Thorne, and she's not your typical blood-sucking vampire lurking in the shadows. No,
Yeah.
she spends her nights going through ancient text driven by a thirst for knowledge more than blood.
It really makes you think about those internal struggles we all face, right? That desire for something more, even when we have everything we're supposed to want.
Exactly. And Amelia's search, it leads her to a groundbreaking discovery hidden deep within the Vatican archives. She finds this manuscript detailing a ritual, almost like a recipe to reverse vampirism.
Whoa, hold on, a cure for vampirism? That changes everything. It's like finding a way to turn back time to undo the unthinkable. It makes you question everything you thought you knew about vampires.
Right. And what's even more intriguing is that the ingredients for this cure, they aren't what you'd expect at all. We're not talking about rare herbs or mystical artifacts. No, the manuscript lists things like sunlight graveyard soil and even a drop of blood from the vampire who turned Amelia.
That's so strange. Sunlight and graveyard soil. It's almost ironic, isn't it? Considering those are things that vampires usually avoid, it makes you wonder if there's some deeper meaning behind these seemingly ordinary ingredients.
Absolutely. And then there's this final ingredient, the most perplexing one of all, the spark of true life.
Now that's where it gets really interesting. What does that even mean? A spark of true life. How do you define something so abstract, especially from a vampire's perspective?
It's a riddle wrapped in a mystery, for sure. And Amelia, with her scientific background, she approaches it with logic but also desperation.
It's fascinating to think about how her scientific mind would tackle such an ethereal concept. Where do you even begin to search for the spark of true life if you're a creature of darkness?
That's the question that haunts Amelia. And in a moment of inspiration, she decides to go to the one place where life begins, a hospital maternity ward.
Wow, what a contrast. A vampire amidst the sterile white walls and the cries of newborns. It's almost poetic, this collision of life and undeath.
And it's there, amidst the beeping machines and nervous expectant parents, that Amelia has her eureka moment, witnessing a newborn take its first breath. She realizes the spark of true life isn't some magical object or ancient spell. It's the raw, untainted force of new life entering the world.
That's beautiful, but also heartbreaking. At the same time, it taps into that universal awe we feel when we witness new life, reminding us of the cycle of existence.
Exactly. But this realization is just the beginning of Amelia's troubles. Her quest for a cure sets off a chain reaction. The Vampire Council, terrified of a cure that could, destabilize their power, they send their enforcers to silence her. And then you've got the vampire hunters sensing weakness. They see her as a monster, regardless of her intentions.
So she's stuck between a rock and a hard place, hunted by both sides. It makes you wonder, who's the real monster in this situation? The creatures who crave power, or those who just fear what they don't understand?
It's a question that will haunt Amelia as she fights for survival, carrying a secret that could change everything now. Before we jump into the next part of her story, let's take a moment to consider the seemingly mundane ingredients for the cure: sunlight graveyard soil, the blood of her sire. What do you think they symbolize?
It's almost like a recipe for balance, don't you think? Sunlight, the life-giving force that vampires are allergic to; graveyard soil, a symbol of death and decay; and the blood of her sire representing the curse that she's trying to break. It's as if the cure requires a confrontation with both the light and the darkness, a recognition of that cycle of life and death that vampires have been cut off from.
That's a powerful insight. And it makes you wonder, if the physical ingredients are so symbolic, what does that say about the spark of true life? Is it just a biological phenomenon, or is it something more profound?
That's a great question, and I think it speaks to the core themes of the story: the search for meaning, the struggle for redemption, and the power of choice. But to delve deeper into those themes, we'll need to explore the next chapter of Amelia's journey. And that, my friend, is a story for another time. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Robots versus Vampires.
Where we left off, Amelia Thorne, our vampire historian, She's facing a really tough choice.
Hmm.
Embrace a cure and maybe lose her immortality or stay trapped in a world that both fears and hates her.
It's a huge decision with big consequences, not just for Amelia, but for the entire vampire world. And while she's dealing with this choice, she's also on the run, hunted by both vampire enforcers and those relentless hunters.
Yeah, talk about pressure. But
Hmm.
before we get into her escapes in the chase, I want to go back to the source of this whole mess, the ancient manuscript Amelia found.
Good point. The
Oh.
manuscript itself, it's like another character, all mysterious, whispering secrets from the past. What else can you tell us about it?
Well, it's called the Immortal Codex. And figuring it out has been really hard for Amelia. The text is all mixed up, ancient languages, cryptic symbols. Even with all her knowledge of vampire history, she's just scratching the surface.
That makes you think who wrote it in the first place. Was it a vampire trying to find redemption, a human scholar trying to understand their enemy, or something else entirely? The possibilities are really interesting.
Right. And Amelia, she believes the manuscript has more than just the cure for vampirism. It might tell us where vampires came from, their weaknesses, maybe even how to stop them for good.
Now that would be a game changer. It would totally change things between vampires and humans forever. Imagine what that knowledge could do.
It's a tempting thought. But uncovering those secrets won't be easy, especially with the Vampire Council on her tail. They're powerful, ancient, and they don't like anyone messing with their order.
I bet they have resources and networks going back centuries. It's going to be tough for Amelia to stay ahead.
Absolutely. But remember, Amelia isn't your average vampire. She spent centuries studying their history, tactics, weaknesses. She knows how they think.
So she's using their own knowledge against them. Classic underdog story, the individual versus the system. In this case, the system is centuries old and super strong.
Exactly. But it's not just the council she has to worry about. The hunters are getting closer to, driven by generations of fear and hate. They see all vampires as monsters, no matter what.
It reminds you of the prejudice and fear between different groups, right? Whether it's species beliefs, anything that divides us, it makes you think about the assumptions we make and what happens because of them.
You're right. Amelia is caught in the middle of this ancient fight, trying to make her own way, break free from what others expect of her.
It's a fight for control, the right to decide who you are. I think we can all relate to that in some way.
Absolutely. And as she goes through all this danger, she's always thinking about those symbolic ingredients: sunlight, graveyard soil, the blood of her sire. It's like a ritual to find balance.
Right. It's like the cure needs her to face everything. Life and death, light and darkness. Makes you wonder if true healing only comes when you accept everything about yourself, good and bad.
That's a deep thought. And don't forget the most mysterious ingredient, the spark of true life. Finding it in the maternity ward was just the start. Now Amelia has to figure out how to use it in the ritual, how to harness its power.
And what about the other ingredients? We know the blood of her sire is important, but she staked him ages ago. How can she find a blood sample after all this time?
That's a big problem, and it sends Amelia on this crazy journey all over the globe. From the catacombs under Paris to the beaches of the Caribbean, she's tracing her sire's past, hoping to find something of him left behind.
Wow. Sounds like a wild adventure with history and the supernatural mixed in. What kind of challenges does she face along the way?
Oh, everything. Secret societies guarding ancient things, rogue vampire hunters trying to get famous, and, of course, the council's enforcers always right behind her.
I can imagine the pressure of always being hunted, never getting a break. It makes those small moments of peace, those connections she makes along the way, even more important.
You're right. And even with the danger and uncertainty, Amelia keeps going. She has a new purpose and a little bit of hope, and as she gets closer to her goal, she starts to realize that the cure might not be what she thought.
What do you mean? Does it not work? Is there a trick?
The cure itself might work, but the manuscript says there might be consequences that go way beyond just one vampire changing its sound. It suggests that reversing vampirism could destroy vampire society as a whole, their powers, their immortality, everything they've built for centuries.
Wow, that changes everything. It's not just personal anymore. It could change the entire supernatural world.
Exactly. And Amelia is right in the middle of this possible disaster. What will she do with this power? Will she use it to help her find peace? Or will she be the reason they're destroyed? We'll have to wait for the final part of our deep dive to find out.
I'm hooked. This is what I love about these stories. They twist what we think we know. They make us question our ideas and face tough questions about identity, right and wrong, and what it means to exist.
And we're just getting started. We'll be back after a quick ad. Welcome back to Robots vs. Vampires.
Where the edges of reality, well, they get kind of blurry.
We're right on the edge of our seats, ready to see how Amelia's story ends.
Uh,
Remember, she's got all the ingredients. She's dodged the vampire enforcers and those hunters, and now she's holding the cure to vampirism like it's a bottle of water. It's a big moment, a crossroads, where everything could change for her whole species.
it makes you think how heavy that decision must feel, right? The power to change history to hold a secret that big.
Exactly. And as Amelia gets ready for the ritual, she's not just mixing stuff together. She's remembering centuries of stuff. The pain of becoming a vampire, the never-ending thirst watching everyone she loves grow old and die while she stays the same. It all comes back to her. And she has to face what being immortal has really cost her.
It makes you wonder, if you had the choice, would you trade a normal life for forever with all that sadness and loneliness? What would you give up to live forever?
That's the question that's haunting Amelia as she stands there ready to change. The cure, it's not just a potion anymore. It's like a symbol of everything she's won and lost, a reflection of her whole weird life.
And the manuscript warned her, didn't it? The spark of true life. It wasn't just an ingredient, it was a test to see if she really wanted to be human again, or if she just wanted out of her situation.
Right, like a spiritual trial to make her face her deepest desires. Why does she want this? Is she going back to humanity or just running away?
And as she mixes everything, the air feels charged, you know? Moonlight shines in. It's eerie, lighting up that vial in her hand. It shimmers with light and shadow, life and death, all swirled together. It's a powerful image, those forces pulling at each other, that balance between two worlds.
And Amelia lifts the vial to her lips, but then she stops. Doubt creeps in. Can she really give up this power, this immortality that's been her for so long? It's scary to let go of the only life you've ever known, even if it's a curse.
And just then, bam, the hunters bust in, all guns blazing, ready to end her. They only see a monster, something to kill. They don't see her struggle, her search for redemption.
And as if that wasn't enough, the Vampire Council shows up seconds later, eyes burning with rage. They want that cure. They see Amelia as a traitor, someone who's messing with their power.
Yeah. So she's caught, right? Two sides, each one trying to control her. It's like that classic standoff, the individual in the middle of a war.
But Amelia's done being their puppet. She's spent centuries being pushed around, used, and tricked. Not this time. She's making her own choices.
So what does she do? Give in to one side.
With this defiant yell, Amelia smashes the vial on the floor. Chaos explodes. The hunters go nuts. They attack the council, loses it over the cure, and turns on the hunters. It's pure pandemonium. Everyone's desperate and clashing.
Wow, so she denies them both. That's a powerful move. She refuses to play their game. It says a lot about free will and deciding your own destiny.
Amelia might not have the cure, but she has something better, the power to choose. She's taken back control, broken free from everything that's held her back. It's a strong message about the human spirit, how we can overcome anything.
And as the fight goes on around her, Amelia vanishes into the shadows, gone. She leaves chaos and uncertainty behind, but also a little bit of hope, a reminder that even when things are bad, we can choose our own way.
And that, my friends, is the power of a good story. It makes us think, sparks our imagination, and leaves us with questions. What happens to Amelia? Will the cure show up again? What does it all mean for vampires and humans?
Those are questions we have to think about. And as we deal with our own crazy world, maybe Amelia's story reminds us that the toughest battles are the ones inside us. The fight to be who we are, to make choices that match our values, to find meaning when everything feels chaotic.
Well said. And with that, we come to the end of Amelia's story. Thanks for joining us on this journey. And remember, the only limit to reality is our imagination. Until next time, keep exploring the impossible.